Most importantly is to understand yourself as a business owner and what you want. And I think, we don't get there until we've been in business for a little while and we start to feel frustrated or out of alignment or what have you. But knowing yourself and what you want is the most important thing, and what your purpose is. And then building out from there, we can make decisions, tactical decisions about the business structure and the business architecture that supports whatever it is that you really want to build.
Welcome back to From Crisis to Justice. I am your host, Parag Amin, and today I am joined by Stephanie Hayes. Stephanie is a business and exit strategist, and she's the founder of Assets to Exits, where she helps small business owners design exit strategies that turn their companies into true assets. With a background spanning innovation, business model design, financial operations, and change management, Stephanie has guided founders in nearly every sector, from public to private, startup to scaled, through meaningful strategic transformation. She also owns several businesses herself and is working on acquiring and scaling more. So I'm excited to talk to you about all of this, Stephanie. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
So you call yourself a business architect. How is that different from traditional business coaching or consulting?
Yeah, so the coaching world is more about helping people make decisions and learn about themselves, learn about their business, that sort of thing. I am truly the architect. My background is in business model design. It is in business architecture. It is in organizational design at the higher sort of corporate level. So my interest is in how we build and design our businesses to be more aligned with who we are as business owners, to be more aligned with our purpose, to be more aligned with, how we want our business to develop in the long run, and the structure in the organization that we need to put in place in order to do that. And that spans not just our kind of corporate structure, but also the structure of our teams and the structure of our marketing strategies and the structure of our offers and the structure of our systems. So the way that we build our businesses and design our businesses is really important to how we're actually going to deliver the outcomes and get to the goals that we've set for ourselves.
Wow. Okay. And so what are some of the keys or fundamentals to designing a business so it fits in that organizational structure that you're mentioning? So it fits whoever the founder is or whatever they're trying to accomplish. Like, what's the right way to think about that or look at that?
Yeah, a lot of people start out and they just kind of follow what they know how to do, right? I in the corporate world, maybe I was an HR manager, and then I'm just going to go off on my own and I'm going to start up a business consulting around HR, something like that. And so they just start doing something, right? And then a few years down the road, they often get to the point where they're not feeling super motivated inside their businesses, or something's not quite right. So what I always take it back to is alignment. So alignment with who you are as a business owner. And we go right back to understanding who they are and what they value and what they are looking for and where their passions lie as a business owner, not passions like I have a cause, but more, am I most motivated by the people I'm trying to serve? Or am I most motivated by my offers? Am I most motivated by the skills that I bring to the table? Or am I most motivated in the way that I want to work? We go all the way back to that, because all the decisions that we make around our business going forward from there has to tie back to that sort of core. Because if you build a business that's not aligned with who you are as a business owner, you're going to have a really hard time growing it and wanting to put your energy into it, that sort of thing. So I think we're taught how to build businesses in a very sort of textbook way that doesn't account for all of the nuances and differences that I have learned are really relevant and really important to a business owner. So we go all the way back there, and then we start building from there. So what does the business need to do for you? What do you value? What needs to be true in everything inside the business? Then who do we want to work with, and who's that ideal customer? And then we can start talking about what we offer them and what our services are, our products, or whatever it might be. And then we talk about how we're going to sell them and how we price them and what we deliver and how we deliver them. And then we talk about what the back end of the business looks like to be able to support that. We talk about our marketing strategies to be able to support that. So it all builds upon each other. Whereas, when most people start, they just kind of go straight to what am I going to offer? And they try to build an offer around then, like you have to do your time. You have to kind of get to a point where you feel something about your business one way or the other. And then it's the right time to go back and start, talking about alignment, that sort of thing. So, most importantly is to understand yourself as a business owner and what you want. And I think, we don't get there until we've been in business for a little while and we start to feel frustrated or out of alignment or what have you. But knowing yourself and what you want is the most important thing, and what your purpose is. And then building out from there, we can make decisions, tactical decisions about the business structure and the business architecture that supports whatever it is that you really want to build.
Mm. So let me ask you. So, I was having a conversation about this with a friend of mine about business and entrepreneurship in general. And one of the challenges that I found, and this touches upon something you just said, is, ideally you want to build an organization, a business that it values what you value, and it accomplishes whatever goal or goals you're trying to accomplish. And part of that, though, is building the system so that everything is true to the extent that you want it to be, meaning it is helping you accomplish your personal goals. It's helping you accomplish the mission you've set out to accomplish. It's accomplishing it ideally in the way that you want it to be accomplished. But I think the biggest challenge, and maybe the biggest myth, at least as I see it, is that all those things can be true at once and that they sustain forever. Meaning, I think that one of the bigger challenges is that in any business that's scaling, that's growing, things are constantly breaking. And I think that there's kind of this myth that one day, everything will be perfect and you can come and go from the business as you see fit and it will just run itself. Do you think that really is a myth, or do you think that that's a real possibility?
I think you have to break that down into two separate things. Can you create a business where you don't need to be constantly, doing stuff and being the practitioner? Absolutely. And that's what we work with our clients on, because they often come to us and they think what they need to do is sell their business. But what they really want to do is create an operational exit where they still own their business, but they've taken themselves out of that role. And there is a point in time that all business owners get to where they've grown enough, but they're still associating their value in the business with the doing of things and the operational. And once they start to take themselves out of that and really work to their most powerful work, then they start to reach a new level of scale and a new level of growth and new opportunities, because now they can see them rather than being so tied down by the stuff that needs to get done inside the business. So taking yourself out of the business is a worthy goal, and it's something that you can create that is sustainable. The other part of your question is that, we're always working towards having reached something. That's not real. That's not true. And it's one of the things that keeps people so frustrated, is because they always think, oh, I should have gotten somewhere by now. And it should just be like in this homeostasis, this sort of like nothing changes. Well, if nothing's changing in your business, you're on the road to demise, because it means that you're not growing, you're not evolving. So once you stop thinking that you need to have arrived somewhere, then you can get into this real creative flow inside the business. And yes, we want to create some stability and that sort of thing, and you can keep working on those building blocks inside the business. But no, the business never reaches a state where it just sits there, because if it does, it's sort of like it's going to die, right? You have to always be evolving. You have to, and why wouldn't you want to either? That's where you get your creativity from. That's where you find your new opportunities. And because the world around you evolves all the time, you kind of need to as well. So once you lose that expectation that you should have arrived somewhere, and you look back and see what you've actually done, like that's a pretty interesting perspective, because it's so easy to get caught up in like, oh, I haven't gotten to this place that someone thinks that you should be at. but actually look at all of the things that I have achieved and look at where I've gotten to, right? So I think it's a tricky place to get into. It's a place that a lot of people get stuck. So shifting that perspective on your business to it being a living, breathing entity that constantly evolves and constantly changes. I'm not talking about chaos, right? I'm not talking about constantly being in a state of like unrest, but that always evolving. That's a healthy thing for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think life and business, they both are the never ending climb, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, what do you think the biggest misconception is that business owners have about exits?
That exits are only available to tech bros or VC backed companies that are in the Silicon Valley or whatever, right? There are marketplaces for $500 businesses. You can buy a five. I've bought a $500 business, so the fact that you can sell and that there is a market for whatever you've created, it starts a conversation that nobody's having right now. And when we've started talking about exits for this particular, type of business owner, which is oftentimes, very small businesses or what I call micro businesses or these solo entrepreneurs or, they're early seven figures or even like somewhere in the six figures. Those are all sellable businesses. And so that just knowing that that's a possibility for them, that they could sell and that they could make an exit is like a huge new way of thinking for people. And this is where the whole asset-based business models started to come from. That my interest is not just in facilitating an exit, which I certainly can help my clients do and have helped my clients do, but my whole perspective on exits is if you start to look at your exit strategy 5-10 years in the future, you can do a benchmark valuation and figure out like what would I get for my business right now if I wanted to sell it. But then if we start working backwards from there, now you have a growth strategy that is built based on the gaps you saw in your valuation or the opportunities you found in your valuation. So where I might have a valuation of selling my business for $1.3 million right now, if I do these things to fill the gaps that showed up in my SDE valuation, I can now double the value of my business in 5 years when I ultimately want to sell it, rather than just getting to an exit when you feel really burned out or you don't like your business anymore or whatever. So the work that we do with our clients actually is more around the growth strategy and looking at your business as an asset as opposed to just an income vehicle. So we will work with our clients for 3 to 5 years being the custodians of the generation of that value. What that does is it starts to change the energy and the perspective from the business owners, where they go from, I'm just doing this until I'm not doing it anymore. Like I'm just in this sort of hamster wheel. I don't see what I'm working towards. That's when people get really burned out. But when they start to see that they've got something to work towards and that they're actually contributing to a bigger wealth event for themselves in the future, their energy totally changes inside their business, and they start thinking about new strategies, and we start developing growth strategies that actually are tied to the development of that value. So yes, if you're going to grow revenue inside your business, that's always going to be helpful for you. But so oftentimes they get into this real stuck pattern of like, well, the only way for me to grow more revenue is to just buy more ads, right? And then that's not like entirely profitable. What we want to do is we want to look at diversification inside your business model, and are there new revenue channels, do we need to diversify your customer base, like what's gonna, because those are all risk adjustments inside of a valuation exercise. If I have all my dependency on one particular revenue channel, do I have all my dependencies on a particular type of customer, that kind of stuff. There's like 80 different assessments we would do on a valuation, and that's where all of the gold is. That's where I can figure out how to build a much more valuable business and give myself the time to do that. Right, there are going to be people who show up and they're just like, I just need to sell right now. Okay, great, we'll connect you with buyers, we'll connect you with private equity firms, we'll connect you with an investment fund, whatever it might be. But I'm more interested in the people that are like, okay, I know I want to exit. I know I want to sell. I know I want to make an operational exit, whatever it is going to be in sort of 3 to 5 years. Let's make that business as valuable as we could make it between now and then and create like an asset. And then there's people who just realize after that conversation, they don't really want to exit. They don't really want to sell their business or take themselves out, but they want a different role inside their business and they really want to grow it. So, with an asset focus. So, we'll sometimes just do the work with them there, kind of the same work, but with a different end goal in mind. So, just starting the conversation around exits is opening up this whole other perspective for these business owners that they never knew that they could even pursue.
Right. And I think that a common misconception for business owners is that the day you want to sell, you should be more or less you're prepared to sell. Said differently, I think that a lot of people don't realize when they haven't gone through an exit or participated in an exit or learned about exits that there is a preparation process to get the ideal exit and the ideal valuation. And I think a lot of business owners, especially small business owners, unfortunately, realize that a little bit too late, meaning that they're ready
Yeah.
to sell now, but they haven't put in the groundwork or the preparation to be able to sell at a higher value. And so couple questions as it relates to that. One, what kind of time period would you say that business owners should take if they're preparing their business for sale? And two, what kind of things do you think they should be doing during that time to get ready for the sale?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you start thinking about this 3 to 5 years before you really truly want to exit. You're totally right that if my decision to exit is like I need to do it now, you're going to have to just sort of get what you get, right? And there's very little substantial change that you can make in your business in a short period of time like that to substantially affect valuation. That's going to be more around marketing, right? It's going to be more about how you message and set up your business with the offer letters and the memorandums and all of that sort of thing. But if you give yourself, get 3 to 5 years, you have the opportunity to make substantial impacts on the value of your business. And again, I come back to this is why we do an exit roadmap and an exit strategy that where we do a benchmark valuation and we do that risk assessment on your business. And what I mean by risk assessment is like if I was a buyer, I wouldn't just do an SD evaluation and say, well, that's what we're going to buy it for. You're going to start there because that's all numbers. And then you're going to start going through all of these questions about the business. And that's where you get your buying number from, right? How much risk is there from, non-diversification? How much risk is there from external markets? How much risk is there from blah, blah, blah? There's like I said, there's like 80 questions. So what I always suggest is we start there in terms of figuring out what you're going to do in that 3 to 5 years, because that's entirely tied to like those answers to those questions directly affect your valuation and what a buyer would pay for your business. Now, is it perfect? Can I accurately predict what someone's going to buy your business for in 3 to 5 years? No, but these are the same kind of questions that someone would ask if they're going through a valuation exercise. So back out of there and figure out how many of those risk adjustments could you address inside of your business in the next 3 to 5 years to either grow your top line, grow your bottom line, or offer fill the gaps and fill the holes that were negatively affecting your valuation, and therefore that translates to higher valuation, higher value. Now, some of those strategies are going to, going back to alignment, some of those strategies are things that this business owner would just never take on. So we don't do them, right? Like it doesn't mean you have to take on everything that comes out of the valuation. And I had a client I was working with that she would have increased her valuation by a significant amount if she was able to do this one thing and address this one thing. But for her, it was like a no-go. That would mean taking on a whole other line of business and that she really didn't want to do and was like not well aligned to her values and who she was as an individual. Well, we're not going to do it, right? Yeah. Could it increase your valuation, but it wouldn't be in alignment with her as a business owner. So we developed that growth strategy out of your exit roadmap, and now you know where you're going, right? But in order to prepare, it's about tying those two things together. It's about understanding where the business is currently affected by either risk or a lack of opportunities, and then putting a work plan together that enables you to change that. You have to be realistic. It's going to take you a few years to really make those changes and really get the benefits of them. So I would say start having this conversation early and give yourself a chance to change the profile of your business from just a sort of hamster wheel income generating business totally dependent on ads or something like that to something more diversified that's going to be more attractive to an investor. The other piece here that I hear a lot is businesses that have a personal brand. So they've all been, it's been created around an individual. And there's a lot of those out there. A lot of my clients have that. And so that gives you the time to sort of neutralize the business and turn it into something that's going to be easier for someone to take on. One of the businesses that I bought was a personal brand. It was totally tied to a personal brand. So we had to spend a lot of time, not just sort of neutralizing the brand, but also a lot of the audience was very attached to this individual that used to own the business. And so we had to almost retrain that and develop that trust with the new team. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about for sure, but all those things are things you can address if you give yourself the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, a lot of businesses today, you hear a lot about the importance of personal branding and the need for that. But maybe ironically, it can adversely affect the exit if you don't have the exit in mind. So can you talk a little bit about how one goes about if they've built a personal brand or a business around their name or their personal brand, what should they be doing if they're looking to potentially make an exit to make it valuable for an acquirer such as yourself or somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, especially for these types of businesses, if there's programs or, coaching programs, that kind of thing, it is very much tied to the individual, and people are always going to want to know who they're buying from. So having a personal brand, or at least having a personal presence in your brand, is always going to be beneficial for these businesses. So that's where the conundrum comes in, right? If you tie it much too much to the individual, then it's going to be a hard sell, right? It's going to be, sometimes there's an arrangement where somebody will buy the personal brand and there's some type of agreement where the individual stays on and just is like sort of the figurehead, does some marketing, whatever. But most of the time what you want to do is you want to prepare for that, neutralizing the brand, so you're not selling you know Amy X, right? You're selling like a product name or a program name. And, like you're probably going to have to redo some videos or what have you. But over time, as you start to neutralize the brand, you turn it into a new brand that is more outcome specific, and you put a team in place, right? That team can transition and develop the relationships. Like I've put a team in place, and my community manager is the one who has relationships. All I do is come in and do coaching, but I could definitely, I'm preparing for my team to be doing some of the coaching now inside of the business as well. And then I'll keep moving along. But this business is no longer built around me. It's built around our team and what we provide as a service, as opposed to you're getting me and my experience and who I am. So there's just a process for doing that over time, and how you do it really kind of depends on your audience and the relationship you have with them and how you've created your products and your services and your programs and that sort of thing. So like it's all doable, but you just need the right kind of strategy and the right understanding of your existing community and your existing audience, and you need the time to be able to make that transition.
Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to building businesses, what are some common blind spots you see, uh, maybe early stage, maybe mid stage, or even late stage owners make that can lead to problems later on down the road?
What I would say one of the biggest problems people have is trying to replicate what other people have done and convert like their results, compare them to the results of others that they consider to be in their space. And there's just so much, there's so much difference between one individual and another, and what they value and how they've approached things. You don't see a lot of what happens behind the scenes. So trying to build a business based on like hacking what someone else has done is going to be so limiting. And I think a lot of people buy in, even those business owners that are like aware and kind of tuned into the fact that these promises are often, not, they don't see them through. They still like the idea of someone coming to them and saying, I'll give you my 5-step framework and you're going to build a business that's successful. But it never works. I have so many clients that have come to me because they got into these mastermind programs or these high ticket, someone's going to teach me the way to do that. And it never works. It's not that their model wasn't good or they didn't have good information. It's that it wasn't them, right? It wasn't that business owner and what they want and what they need. So I think that's one of the big blind spots, is that I try to build my business based on what other people have done, and it just never works. So you've got to be clear on who you are, what you want, what your business needs to look like, and your own plans and your own unique, brand of business, as opposed to just trying to shoehorn in something else that has worked for some other person, because that's just a source of massive frustration and a waste of money.
Right. I'd like to clarify that with you because there's two different concepts that I think would benefit from the clarification. So, on the one hand, there is the aspect of being unique and not trying to imitate somebody else, because like you're never going to be that other person, and the market already has that other person. So the market doesn't need a copycat of that person or a wannabe copycat of that person. So that's on the one hand. But on the other hand, there's this idea that success leaves clues, and you want to replicate some of the success and some of the good steps and smart decisions that somebody else has made, because they've already kind of paved the path to a certain extent. So what are your thoughts on those two?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think that learning from other people is, I mean, I'm constantly listening to books but you need to be able to take the pieces out of that knowledge and that experience that are relevant to you, and leave the pieces that are not. It's when people try to replicate a strategy. Now, this works fine for tactical stuff, right? I want a new framework for building a funnel that is a webinar funnel. Great. Buy the course, buy the step by step framework. That works great, right? I've done that a bunch of times. Codified knowledge. Awesome. But when you're talking about designing your business and designing your strategy, it doesn't work, because you are a different individual with different experiences, different skills, different team, different journey, different everything. And when people try to adopt these sort of 5-step frameworks to your business strategy, like, it doesn't work. It just doesn't, and it never does. So learn from others, absolutely. Like those relationships that you create with peers, those, the listening to others' experiences, and getting their stories and their narrative. Awesome. There's tons of great stuff there. But when, and so many people try to sell you this, the $30,000 mastermind, where if you just follow these steps, you're going to have the perfect business. No, you're not. You're never going to. You're just going to end up frustrated. And that's why so many people come out of those programs and they're dissatisfied. They are frustrated. They spent all that money, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just for clarification. That's kind of what I'm talking about, because I believe truly that each business is its own little entity, and needs to have a heart and a soul and a heartbeat that is very unique, just like fingerprints are. And that's when you become successful and you find your opportunities for growth.
I like that. And speaking of opportunities and growth and success, one of the things you really seemingly harp on is having assets based businesses, even in service based businesses. So, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think where it came from, I was down in Texas a few years ago, and I was working with a client. We're just orchestrating a big launch for her that week, and then we decided to take a day on our own to like work on our own businesses and sort of mastermind those together. And I was just looking at this big wall of all of my experiences and all of the stuff that I've done and all of the things, and I just thought, man, I'm not really building anything. Like, I just continue to chase new clients. And is that what my life is going to be like forever? I'm a service-based business owner. Am I just going to keep chasing, like, what? There's got to be something more to this. And I kept thinking back to having lost my real estate, my property, and my divorce, and thinking, how can I get that back, get an asset back in my life when I won't be able to afford real estate here again. I live in a very expensive part of the world. But I want that asset in my, like, how, and I started to think, well, I can buy businesses, I can invest in businesses, I can build businesses because I have that skill set. And then I started thinking about my own business, and I started thinking about, how can I look at my own business as an asset? How can I change that mindset to be, from being so dependent on the income to building something that has value inside of my business? I started thinking about this. And I started thinking about this in the context of my own clients who were all service based business owners. I started to realize that there are all these things in our business that would be valuable to someone that you could sell. And the business that I bought a couple of years ago, I didn't buy the entity. I actually bought the assets of a business. So it got me really thinking about where we have value inside our business that we don't even recognize. And I created this little document, these 9 types of assets you can build inside your business, and those are all correlated to what would be valuable to someone to as a buyer, right? And there's no reason you couldn't create those assets and sell them on their own. Like, you create a retreat every year, and it becomes a big brand, it becomes a big thing. You could sell that, like that would be an asset that you could buy, build inside your business. It would grow in value as you build it out. All the SOPs you create for your digital marketing agency, you can bundle those up and sell them to other agency owners. All the creative work you do in your business for marketing, curate those, and they become something valuable to another buyer. The partnerships you create inside your business, those are all valuable, and those become assets inside your business. The audience you build, your brand that you build, like, all these things have value. And I started to really think about businesses in terms of assets. So even the little business owners who don't necessarily have some big exit strategy, they have adopted this asset focus, and they feel so much better about their business knowing that they're focusing on building things inside their business that grow in value, that aren't just like, I just need to keep getting clients. Like, that's always going to be a part of your business for sure. But those assets give us a new perspective and make us feel like we're actually building something as opposed to just chasing clients. And so that's really changed the perspective of a lot of my business owners. And they now have these they make decisions really differently inside their business now in terms of what they're investing in.
I love that. So if listeners want to find out a little bit more about you, or even the 9 types of assets that they can build inside of their business, how can they do that, Stephanie?
Best to go to my website, stephaniehays.biz. I can also be found on LinkedIn. I'm quite active there. Those are probably the 2 best places to find me. You can download the 9 types of assets inside my website. And it's just like, it's good food for thought, right? It's a good mindset shift in how you think about your businesses. And I've seen it make a huge change for even people who are just kind of happy to run their little lifestyle businesses, but like the opportunity to build something more.
Right. It's always nice to have options. And so ultimately, if you build something that you can sell and exit, it's far better than having to just shut it down for no
Yeah.
income.
Yeah, that breaks my heart. I'm like, there's so much value inside that business. Don't shut it down.
Right. Right. Well, good. Speaking of value, Stephanie, I appreciate all the value you've shared with me and the listeners today. You've been an incredible guest and offered some great insights. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. And to the listeners, if you found value in this and found it helpful, make sure you like and subscribe so you know when the next podcast episode is dropping. Thank you for joining me on From Crisis to Justice. Until next time.